Hello and welcome to Future Self Dreaming. My name is Carlos Kukulkan. In previous presentations I've uploaded to YouTube, I've outlined the significance that Venus, known as the morning star, has had on my personal journey of awakening and initiation. After having been awakened by the light of the morning star as a boy, this mysterious encounter led me to initiations within the Great Pyramid in Egypt, as well as in temples of Chichen Itza in Mexico, as I delved into ancient mystery school teachings and shamanism. In those previous presentations, I outlined how Venus, the morning star, is associated with the cult of Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl, the plumed or rainbow serpent, and the process of Kundalini awakening that was taught within the Mayan, Aztec, Toltec priesthoods of the Cosmic University of Chichen Itza. Recently, after some significant change in my personal life, I took out my grandfather's Freemasonic apron and book and contemplated the significance of his initiations into Freemasonry in regards to my own journey. This also led to attending a regular weekly class on Gnosticism through the modern-day lineage of Samael Anwar. Inspired by a renewed interest into Gnosticism, Kabbalah and alchemy, as well as the recent Netflix series by Graham Hancock titled Ancient Apocalypse, which points to some of the hidden chambers within ancient temple structures, I ordered a book by researcher Freddy Silva titled The Lost Art of Resurrection, Initiation, Secret Chambers, and the Quest for the Otherworld. This is the book here. In this book, Freddy Silva describes that thousands of years before the most famous yet altered version of resurrection, known as that of Jesus Christ, initiates of the mystery school traditions were practicing secret resurrection rituals in which they metaphorically died and were reborn, a process of living resurrection resulting in a transformative spiritual experience of rebirth into a higher order of reality, whereby the soul had risen from the dead of the physical material realm. In the chapter in his book titled The Metamorphosis of the Soul, Freddy writes, "The ritual of raising the dead reverberates into our time, recognized as it is in Easter, a religious event marking the pivotal time of death and rebirth in the spiritualized God-man, now characterized in Christianity by a resurrected Jesus. Yet, the etymological roots of Easter lie with Isis, Astarte, who in her Saxon incarnation was Ostara, the morning star, and finally the Germanic Eosta. As such, she equates with the Egyptian ideal of the reborn soul following the culmination of the ritual of resurrection at dawn." Upon reading a description of the book from its cover, what piqued my interest was the relationship that these resurrection rituals have with the morning star, Venus. Freddy highlights, and I'm reading from his book, that these rituals traditionally were performed in a cave or underground chamber, a room purpose-built for such initiation, often known as a bridal room, a space whereby the initiate would undertake a perilous ordeal during an out-of-body experience into the other world. When they returned to their body, they were led by priests or priestesses to witness either the rising of Venus, Sirius, or the equinox sunrise. One such initiatory chamber complex is found at a local temple in the region of Cusco, Peru, named Kenko. A ceremonial center featuring a natural phallic monolith and a ritual chamber dedicated to an earth goddess, a perfect representation of divine marriage carved from natural stone. Kenko's unique chamber is accessed by a narrow passage deliberately fashioned out of solid rock to face the equinox sunset, the direction of ritual descent into the other world. Then one enters a womb-like setting before bending into an eastward exit onto a bowl-shaped courtyard whose bedrock has been cut deliberately and painstakingly into a vertical wall at a compass angle that accurately references the heliacal rising of Venus at the autumn equinox. The southern end of the courtyard, although now in ruins, allows a view of Sirius at the summer solstice. Venus, like Sirius, was considered by numerous cultures as a star of wisdom, and specifically as the morning star that brings periodic renewal. Not surprising then that Kenko was regarded locally as the entrance to the other world. Venus and the Sun are seen rising together again 3 months later at the winter solstice, this time at Sacsayhuaman, an impressive megalithic complex spread across 50 acres. It is a short walk from Kenko along an old ceremonial route, and given their sacred astronomical connections, it is highly likely that both sites once formed part of a ritual whole. Sacsayhuaman's unique feature is its serrated megalithic walls. Before the conquistadors plundered one side of the compound for building material, this unique construction, when observed from the air, took on the appearance of a bird's wings, more so given that the site's name in Quechua means the place of the satisfied falcon. Although this bird receives scant attention in Andean mythology, the symbolism would make a visiting ancient Egyptian feel very much at home, where the falcon was revered as both Seker and Horus, the former as a god of rebirth and the latter as the symbolic continuation of the resurrected Osiris, whose rituals were enacted and consummated on the equinox and solstice. The axis along the raised section of Sacsayhuaman aligns to the heliacal rising of Sirius on June the 21st, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, while the extreme edge of its northern wall marks the solstice sunrise. Inversely, on December the 23rd, it is Venus that rises along its axis before sunrise, a phenomenon that recurs every 8 years, making this a perfect spot for celebrating the resurrected hero and the rise of wisdom. In his chapter, The Other World of the Celts, Freddy writes about the knowledge of the mysteries held by the Celtic Druids, and that the information that propelled initiates towards the final act of resurrection was considered restricted material. Freddy identifies that 2 of the Celtic initiatory mounds, Noath and Newgrange, once formed part of a ritual whole, proven by their astronomical alignments. The former is aligned to the equinox, the latter to the winter solstice, and both to the heliacal rising of Venus. A carving above the light box in Newgrange even marks Venus's 8-year transit. Had you have lived in 3051 BC, you would have observed Venus rising from Noath on the autumn equinox, and exactly 3 months later from Newgrange on the winter solstice. Venus was the star to whose light initiates were resurrected in Egypt in order to be considered sons of God, a position shared by the Jerusalem Church, and quite likely the priests at Sacsayhuaman and Kenko, for, as already explained, those structures were aligned to the very same heliacal rising of Venus in that same very year. The interrelationship between God-man, Venus, equinox, and solstice was commemorated symbolically, at least, in the early Christian era. According to the Bible, John the Baptist was conceived on the autumn equinox and was born on the summer solstice, while Jesus was conceived on the spring equinox and born on the winter solstice. The relationship is enshrined in the Master Mason ritual in Scottish Rite Freemasonry, whose traditions commemorate events and rites that took place as much as 5,000 years ago. This ought to give us a clue about the types of Gnostic initiatory rites into the mysteries that were hidden and persecuted by the Roman Catholic Church. The relationship to these resurrection initiations that we celebrate each year at Easter is still hinted at in the stories of Jesus emerging from a cave after 3 days. What has been lost and disguised by the Roman Church is that Jesus was not the only initiate to have undergone this process of resurrection within a cave at Easter, being awakened by the morning star, and Jesus even referenced himself as the morning star. Freddy Silva writes about the relationship to these resurrection rituals encoded into Roslin's Chapel in Scotland. He writes that the building was founded in 1446 on the autumn equinox, no doubt accompanied by a ritual filled with symbolism, not least of all because just before sunrise, the 2 brightest objects in the eastern horizon were Venus and the star long associated with the key to the mysteries and to the records of all knowledge, Regulus. In time, Roslin's east window would come to emphasize these prominent stellar objects and their values. Its geometry is based on the square and the circle, two forms representing the perfect mating of the masculine material with the feminine ethereal, the very process required of the single man that allows him passage to the final phase of living resurrection. But there is more. Just above this elegant work of glass and masonry is a small hole that from a distance appears circular, but in truth is shaped in the form of a five-pointed star, emblem of the Divine Virgin Isis. Made of red glass, it lights up with the rising of the sun at equinox, the moment light and dark are held in perfect equilibrium like a checkerboard. The effect would have been even more pronounced when the original smaller window was in place, which darkened the chapel considerably and made a person feel as though immersed in a sacred cave. But it was outside where the stonemasons putting the final touches to the roof left the most telling symbol of all, a stone beehive featuring a hole shaped like a five-petaled rose, the very symbol of Venus, the Rose of Venus. Moving to Freddy's writings on Central America, the cult of Quetzalcoatl was obsessed with the mysteries beyond life and death, and Quetzalcoatl was said to have made the journey to the other world and returned to talk about it. The Mayan other world is called Xibalba, firestone with the power to transform. At the center of Xibalba stands a mighty ceiba tree, an axis mundi, from which all knowledge emanates. The Mayan shamans sought natural hotspots where this tree of knowledge pierces all tiers of existence and used them to allow the way to travel to the other world, where they gain access to deities, ancestors, and celestial forces. The shaman, an adept by other names, opened this communication between the worlds via an elaborate ritual that dissolved any limitation imposed on the body in the middle world, after which he was able to divine the future and allow the power of the supernatural to merge into daily activities. The Mayan world tree, Huacachan, is found inside the sacred cave Balamcanche, I think that's how you pronounce it, located near Chichen Itza. Its meandering roots, trunk, and limbs and canopy, which are created over millennia from slow-dripping limestone until it formed an impressive stalagmite that seems to hold up the cave's ceiling. In this dark subterranean world, countless initiates came to experience Xibalba, perhaps choosing this cave over thousands like it throughout the Yucatan, precisely because its water-sculpted channels resemble a female vulva and its fallopian tubes. Inside this sensory-deprived world, the soul came to tangle with supernatural beings and pick the fruits of a tree of knowledge. That this specific cave was used as a bridal chamber is immortalized in a local legend that tells of a young man who wished to marry a young maiden against the wishes of her mother. So he hid his beloved bride inside the cave, thus the origin of its alternative name, which translates as Hidden Lady. The strategic placement of major temples above ritual caves became an extension of this practice. The pyramid of Osario at Chichen Itza is a late structure with an access hole on the summit that leads 40 feet down via metal rungs into the cave, now totally enveloped by a man-made structure. It is worth noting that such pyramids are, by and large, aligned to the extreme risings of Venus, which to the Maya represented both the morning star and periodic renewal, and was the first celestial object initiates were shown upon emerging from a restricted chamber. There are two other temples at Chichen Itza sharing identical alignments. To the north of the pyramid of Osario stands the imposing Temple of the Jaguar. The 8 surfaces of its lower room act as a teaching device about creation. Its central figure wields a mirror, the totem used to gaze into the other world, indicating how this individual has replicated the cosmos within himself and as such has earned the right to be a mediator between the worlds. The open-fronted room is guarded by a stone jaguar staring out across the long court of Chichen Itza and beyond, towards the southernmost rising of Venus as well as the winter solstice. Staring back from a high platform is a shakmul, a stone effigy reclining in a very uncomfortable position on its back with a plate resting on his sacral chakra as though meant to hold Venus or the rising sun when they rise above the horizon. Together, these three structures form a perfect right-angled triangle, and given the related symbolism, appear to have shared a function in the living resurrection ritual. The cult of Kukulkan Quetzalcoatl sought nothing less than spiritual transfiguration. The process required the initiate to undergo a symbolic death and rebirth, just as Kukulkan Quetzalcoatl once did over 4 days inside a box made of stone, after which he rose, cried, seized his garments, and put on his insignia of feathers. Then, when he was adorned, he set fire to himself and burned. His ashes raised up, and all the rare birds appeared, for which reason in 8 days there appeared the great star called Quetzalcoatl. Like Osiris, this individual becomes a god, a shining star, and just as Osiris and Orion share a symbolic relationship in the Egyptian resurrection narrative, so the Maya venerate Orion as the cosmic hearth, the womb of the universe, and the point of arrival for souls journeying in and out of the other world. A goodly number of people are known to have taken the title Quetzalcoatl to represent their spiritual status, deserved or otherwise. Kukulkan's example of self-renewal paved the way for future seekers, and the ritual required to follow in his footsteps appears to have been reenacted elsewhere throughout the region. At the temple city of Copan, 7 12-foot stelae chronicle the life of its shaman king, recording his negotiation with the other world along with those of his associates. One stela marks the ruler's first incarnation and his subsequent regeneration as shaman king, which coincided with the first rising of Venus. The king's visage is carved upon the east and west faces of the monolith, while holding the staff of the jewel-headed serpent. As he becomes the physical embodiment of the world tree, so his loincloth apron acts as the foundation of its root, while from said apron emerges the narcotic blue water lily. This unusual apron motif was also employed in an identical ancient Egyptian ritual. Anyway, I hope this presentation illuminates some of the ancient Gnostic practices of living resurrection and has highlighted the relationship that Venus, the morning star, has with these rituals. For counselling sessions, please visit the website futureselfdreaming.com. Until next time, in Lakesh.